So here's the American fertilizer profile. The big numbers on the left, that's the percentage that's imported. We produce almost all of the nitrogen and phosphate we use. Our problem is potash. But we have Canada. Also weird people. But wow, are they reliable when it comes to commodity production. So we get over 80% of what we need from our northern neighbor. We only have 12% of our total vulnerability to one product that is dependent upon the Russian space. Is it inconvenient? Sure. But we've bitched about less. Here's Brazil. There is no Brazilian agricultural sector without Russian involvement. And Russian involvement is going away. It's the world's largest source of soy exports. And without global soy exports, there is not a global pork industry. Except here. And if we're being nice, Canada too. And folks, that's it. There's no China without this. There's no Spain or Germany without the stuff out of Ukraine. It is that simple, and we are now there. Now, the Brazilians were smart, and as soon as they realized things were getting real over in Ukraine, they forward pushed a lot of imports. They have more than enough for this season. And remember, they double crop. We don't know yet if they have enough for the next one in this year. They certainly aren't going to have enough for 2023. Catastrophic reductions in yield because these are not prairie soils. Without those inputs, there is nothing. There's only one competitor to keep an eye on. That's Argentina. Very similar climate to the Midwest, a little bit drier, but same deep prairie soils that we have here. Their problem as well is going to be getting the fertilizer. But this is a country that is already a significant exporter of soy and to a lesser degree corn. And if you're looking for simplicity, you want to produce the inputs that you need for your animal protein. Argentina is the only place out there that can now do that at scale, theoretically. Now, I'm sure you guys have all Argentina, really? Argent-freaking-tina? They have made every wrong choice that you possibly can in the last 90 years, and it shows. I don't mean to suggest that this is inevitable, and it's certainly not imminent. I'm saying it's the only really one to watch for. Now, as you all know, it's not just about inputs, it's also about hygiene, and hygiene is largely an issue of experience, technology, and above all, capital. And the Argentinians have had to import all of their capital for most of the last 50 years. And they're not alone. This is net worth. As you age, your net worth increases. At first, you're spending everything on your kids and your cars and your college and your home. But as you move into your 40s, the kids are moving out and the house is getting paid down. And that last decade before you retire, you're at the peak of your earning and your expenses have dropped. And that makes you the wealthiest you will ever be for your life. And then you retire and you liquidate your stocks and your bonds and you go into T-bills and cash because you won't be able to take the pain of a currency correction or a market crash. You will never have income again. And so if you keep everything engaged and the market falls, you're destitute. Can't afford it, have to go conservative. It's pretty normal. Now, historically, that hasn't really mattered because until industrialized in the 1950s, this is what our demographic profile looked like. Children's at the bottom, young adults, mature adults, retirees at the top, men on one side, women on the other. And the sliver up there in the early 60s, it's small. It's always been small. Speaking back to the dawn of humanity, been more people in their 50s than their 40s. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. There have already been more people in their 40s than their 50s. And so if a small group leaves and a larger group is coming up behind, it's the same ratio each and every year. But when we industrialized and urbanized and globalized in the 50s and 60s, that changed. Because when you live on the farm, especially pre-industrial, kids are free labor. You have a lot. My mom's here, what do you have, 37 brothers and sisters? Yeah. But globalization and industrialization means urbanization because people move into the cities to take value-added services and manufacturing jobs. And so when my mom moved into town, She went from being one of 37 to having 3 kids. Because when you move into town, kids are no longer free labor. They are very loud. They are very annoying. They are very expensive mobile pieces of furniture. And adults aren't dumb. Most adults aren't dumb. Here's us. We've all heard, that blah, 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 the baby boomers, how are we going to afford their retirement? That's legitimate. But it's from a capital point that I'm really concerned. They're the largest generation we've ever had. They're moving into retirement. On average, the boomers retire in the 4th quarter of this year. We are almost there. And they're taking all of their money with them. They're going to lock it into very uninteresting things like T-bills, and they will stay there until they pass on, which on average will not be this decade. So we know that the velocity of capital isn't simply going to slow or stop, it is going to go into screaming reverse. And the cost of capital has to increase by at least a factor of 4 in the next 12 calendar months. The fact that we're going through an economic tightening cycle at the same time is just bad luck. It's going to magnify everything. Capital has never been this cheap. And it never will be this cheap again. So if you need to borrow for anything for the next 20 years, go do it. Right now, they're recording this. You can watch it later because you will never have this opportunity again. That's the capital thing. There's also a workforce thing. So boomers, largest generation we've ever had, retiring this year. That is the single largest factor behind the inflation that we're feeling right now, labor inflation. Because this generation, the Zoomers, the young bucks that are coming up from below, they're the smallest generation we've ever had. In calendar year 2022, that is a shortage of 400,000 workers. And that will increase each and every year for the next 12 until we peak in 2034 with a shortage of 900,000. Only then will it start to get bigger or better. And we know that's exactly where it's going to go because all the baby boomers are here. They've been here since 1965. We know exactly how many there are. And the Zoomers, they've all been here for a few years too. We know exactly what the inflows and the outflows into the market look like for the next 20 years. It's not great. But it is so much worse elsewhere. Here are the big 4 economies of the world, the Europeans, the Chinese, the Japanese, and us. The bottom 2 were terminal 20 years ago. When your birth rate changes and you start having fewer kids, it doesn't manifest immediately. But if you do it for 60 years, it's not that you've run out of children. You ran out of children 40 years ago. You're running out of adults now. And we're looking at mass retirement across the world. Now, there is something very different about the American demography, and it's right here. We know them as, millennials. I just threw up on my mouth a little bit. American boomers did one thing that none of their cohorts in the rest of the world did. They had kids. And we can talk all day about the millennials, and oh, can I? But they have one thing going for them that their equivalent around the world does not have going for them. Here, they exist. They're consuming today. They will be investing in a few years.